Yeah.
We need one more.
Yes.
Gilbert O'Sullivan.
O'Sullivan, who's that?
Doesn't he sing that song, Mike? Alone Again? Gilbert O'Sullivan, I think.
I thought you were talking about Cornelius J. O'Sullivan, alias Corky.
No, thank you.
Scott is joining now, so you should have a quorum shortly.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Scott, let's go ahead. Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is Tuesday, June 1st, and it's the Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee. If I could have a roll call, please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Ms. Conwell,
Present.
Mr. Tillman.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is here, so she's connecting the audio. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr.
No, Simon.
Welcome, Sonny.
Thanks.
Is there public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
In your packet, you'll have received the minutes of the May 18th meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept the motion and a second.
So moved.
Second, Tuma.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Resolution 2021-0136.
Resolution number 2021-0136, authorizing an amendment with project management consultants for owners representative services in connection with the Justice Center Complex project.
Okay, Mike, are you going to handle this, Mike Dever?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of council, and thanks for inviting us to the committee today. I have a few of my colleagues on with me today, both Nicole English and Matt Reimer, that'll be speaking specifically about the contract. In addition, I noticed that Bob Corey's with us also, and he may offer comment too as we go along. So in 2017, the county made a decision to move forward and identify a owner's representative for the Justice Center. After years of analysis and there was a decision, are we going to make some significant investment into the Justice Center complex, or are we going to do a more deeper dive into the facility and as well as the space needs of that building? It was well over 40 plus years old, and a decision was made that we wanted to move forward with a deeper analysis of the facility before making substantial investment. We put out an RFQ for owner representative services in 2017. And in 2019, a group of key stakeholders of the Justice Center participated in the selection process or an interview committee. When the RFQ came back, there was a determination made that PMC, project management consultants, would be the recommended candidate to move forward to carry these owner representative services as we continue to plan the facilities. Those that were involved in that process included the Common Pleas Court, the County Prosecutor's Office, as well as members of the County Executive's Office. And our determination came back that PMC was the right group to lead us in these owner representative services. At the same time, there was a memorandum of an understanding that was being created between the key stakeholders of the Justice Center, which involved an overall of 12 members. Over the last 2 years or so, we have been meeting regularly to discuss the Justice Center, and our owner's representative, PMC, has been leading those discussions. Just recently, over the last few months, we've made a determination in regards to moving forward with a standalone correction center, a new correction center, and we are in the midst of those reviews and trying to select a criteria architect, as well as talking about specific sites throughout the county. Our hope is that we come before this group in a very near future with a criteria architect for that correction center, but that will be in the very near future. So with that being said, we have an amendment before you for the next phase of the Justice Center project. We've been doing the planning phase up until this point, and now we want to move on towards the criteria architect and also design services in the near future. So with that being said, Nicole English is on, and she was going to give you the overall of this amendment, and then we're stand ready to answer any of your questions. Nicole?
Nicole English with Public Works. So like Mike said, we initially had selected PMC through an RFQ process that we also held interviews. There was 4 proposals that were received, 3 got interviewed, and PMC was selected. At the time of the original contract, we could only go so far with the scope and the fee because we did not know beyond the planning what the next step would be. Would there be a new corrections center? Would there be an updated jail? What would the role be? And owner's rep services could be a little bit different based on rehab or new build. So that's why we only scoped at that time the planning. Now we're coming forward to scope the owner's rep services for the new correction center through what we call the guaranteed maximum price reconciliation. So they'll work with us on the initial criteria, architect design, getting the design builder on board, working through schematic design, negotiating with the design builder, and then getting to a price where we're all in agreement, which is the guaranteed maximum price. That's what this amendment takes us through for the owner's rep services. Again, we wanted to do this in pieces because until we know what type of building we're building, what where it's going, how much interaction we're going to need with the owner's rep, we want to do this in stages. So this is just getting us through the next stage in order to move forward with the correction center. When they were selected, it was in their contract and in the RFQ that they were selected for owner's rep services throughout the entire project from beginning to end. It's just, again, we can't, you could put a number, but you would just be pulling a number out of the sky to kind of fully put a number up front. We'd like to be a little more succinct in doing these in phases so that you really know what you're getting for the services and the dollars that we're paying each step of the way. And we're happy to take any questions on the contract itself or the amendment.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
through the chair to Nicole. Yeah, that was one of my questions, Nicole. Location in this specific part of the design phase, wouldn't location matter?
So it will matter for the design services more. We are working through with the steering committee the location of the facility, and we're kind of narrowing it down and trying to work towards that. So at least we know it's new build. That's the main thing that the owner's rep services need to know. When we get the design builder on board, clearly location is going to be critical because what you find on the site is going to really inform how much their cost is in their design. But as far as owner's rep services, I think we know enough now to get this phase under contract.
And one final question, PMC will do the design phase, the whole thing?
They will be the owner's rep for us for all those phases. We will hire a separate, like Mike said, the criteria architect we interviewed, I want to say a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and have come up with a selected consultant that we're trying to work through their scope and fee right now. So we plan to bring that to you council at the end of the month. The design builder will probably follow, early fall. is when we would have a selection for the design builder ready to go and for council to be looking at that point in time. But the owner's rep will continue and serve us through that whole time.
And so this amount 1.2, that's going to cover all those phases?
That will cover the owner's rep services for those phases. So they help us with, they do the negotiating, they help write the contracts, they assist in reviewing all of the pay apps that come from the different consultants. They lead the stakeholder engagement and coordinate with the steering committee. That's what this owner's rep does. It's a more specialized service than we necessarily have on staff because we don't do these big, huge projects every day, right? So they supplement our public works staff on these projects.
And the county's, your department's oversight over designer reps?
Correct, right. So Public Works, we coordinate with them. And so the PMC essentially answers to Public Works as far as, the scope of work and what they're doing. And we pay the invoices and all of that out of Public Works.
Okay, so we're familiar with internally in the office how to do it. It's just we don't do large projects like this.
Yeah, it's, we really takes a specialty, especially on, dealing with the design builders and negotiating the GMP. I mean, this is to a higher degree than we're used to our regular work. Obviously, we do normal building projects and roads and bridges all the time. This is, kind of to the next level, like the hotel. It's a very similar scope of work that we did for the hotel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have a pretty good idea about the decisions that have been made about the new correctional facility that we're building new, we're building on a new site, we're building low rise, we're building six building for 1,600 cells and so on and so forth. But I do not have much understanding about what decisions we have made, if any, about the rest of the Justice Center complex, the courts and the other services that go on there. Are we rehabbing the existing space? Are we building new in at a different site? Are we rebuilding new on the same site? What decisions, if any, have we made so far in that regard?
Regarding the Justice Center itself, discussions were had with Jeff Applebaum and his group with the judges and those that use the facility itself. No decisions have been made. That's going to be a decision down the line. Our concentration right now is on the jail. I believe everybody, especially the committee, is focused on getting not only the jail designed but built, and the Justice Center portion of this, which is a key portion of this, and it also entails the old courthouse. And anybody dealing with the Justice Center will be a question for a little bit later on. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and have any mixed messages. We really want to concentrate on the jail building, design and building right now, and not muddy the waters with the Justice Center. But Mike Dever can take it from here. It has been looked at. The problems have been identified, and it's going to be a decision. I would imagine, Mike, I don't even know when to put a timeline on that, because I would like to get the jail obviously done. Do you have any input on that?
I appreciate that, Chairman Gallagher, as well as Councilman Miller. Yeah, actually, he's 100% correct. Our focus is trying to get this jail portion moving forward, the correction center. So as Nicole had made reference, we've identified a criteria architect. We hope to take it before the selection committee, the Justice Center Selection Committee, actually next week on January 10th, or I'm sorry, June 10th is our date at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll be hosting a meeting, and hopefully they'll affirm our selection or our recommended candidate for criteria architect. And then our hope is that it's before council on the June 22nd meeting for first reading, and then we'll go into committee to discuss that. As for the remainder of the Justice Center, yes, it's still a focus of ours. I expect we'll be back into discussions on the Justice Center probably in early fall, and which it incorporates this amended agreement does incorporate the services of PMC to continue that programming phase for the Justice Center. No decisions have been made whatsoever in regards to the Justice Center, if it's a renovation or it's a new build. So those will be ongoing, but we'll stay tuned, and I'm sure you'll be very much involved, Councilman Miller.
So, Mr. Chairman, Director, it sounds like you have made a decision that there's no reason why the two aspects have to be done simultaneously, and that we could perfectly open a new correction center, but continue to operate the remaining Justice Center portion out of the existing facilities until the new facilities are ready to go at a later date and time.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Along the lines of this corrections center being built someplace other than the current location, we anticipate that there's an opportunity for the courts to be built alongside or close to that when we're contemplating the site for this correction center. I want to make sure that there's plenty of space should the courts move that next to this facility, or are we just looking singularly at this jail?
Actually, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman.
Well, I'm only speaking from as a member of the committee. It's not necessary that the jail be connected to the Justice Center. We don't anticipate that it will. We haven't decided if the Justice Center is going to be redone or moved somewhere else. Those decisions, as I said, kind of muddy the waters. But in reality, the space that we need for a jail, building the way in which we're going to build it in a more of a campus atmosphere to make things not just easier to maintain order, but to provide safety for not only the workers and the inmates, and provide more outdoor ability to have more outdoor activity and to have actual sunshine coming into the building, which is important that we don't have now. The committee was provided this information throughout the years now, I think it is, that we've been doing this. We've had examples of major cities that do not, Philadelphia being one major city, where their jail is quite a ways outside of the downtown area. Transportation has been figured in, and when put to the committee, which encompasses all of the courts and the prosecutors, public defender, and the sheriff, everybody was in agreement that this was the proper way to go.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that also. So what we are considering, and the sheriff's office is very much involved in this, is if the sheriff administrative offices will be on the same site. So we're just making sure that there's enough space wherever that potential site is, that the sheriff's administration, if they choose to be on the same location. So that's probably the only administrative piece outside of the corrections facility that would be incorporated into this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So for clarity, there is a decision that's been made that the Justice Center, the courts will not ever be part of this campus. You know, that this is already a decision that's been made. I think that was Councilman Miller's question in part, that there's been a decision already made that the courts will never be next to or adjacent to this campus. So, I hope the committee is all on board with this, because I'm telling you, I mean, I understand there's all these studies that it works to have a separate area for the jail, but as we've seen, they can't get, detainees upstairs to the courtrooms now, maybe a little better because we have more sheriffs maybe, but for years, all we hear is they can't get people upstairs, and this is going to add costs to the transportation and everything else. So, this is a decision that's already been made, that the courts will be separate from here on out. And I just want that on the record, that that's where we are. And the only remaining question is, does the judge to the court stay where they are or move to another location? And this will necessitate, I would think, that the courts be close enough to conduct business to this campus, wherever that site is.
We anticipate that whatever the site, that it'll be within a reasonable place in the downtown, hopefully, area. Again, everybody on this committee is the administrative judge of their court. All have agreed. I believe, Mike, this was 100% agreement for this plan. And we're on the record all the time. Our meetings are open to the public. And it was a well thought through and tedious, to be honest with you, adventure to go through this and to see the examples, both pro and con. And it seems that, again, this has been an ongoing thing, and I'm knowledgeable about it because I'm only there. I anticipate they'll be coming to us. I want to have the council to be given a presentation in a micro of what I've already, and the committee has already seen, so that there's a better understanding of what this new facility will provide, not just to the inmates, but our staffing requirements. And it's a whole science that we're placing a lot of hopes on, that we're all getting it right. But as far as this decision, this was 100% agreement of the committee, which is everybody in our Justice Center.
Yeah. If I could just follow up, it was a unanimous decision by the steering committee of the Justice Center that agreed that the jail or the correction center should be a standalone site.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Wait, excuse me,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Miller. The question isn't whether it's standalone. The question is whether it's going to be adjacent to the campus it's being built, just for clarity. And for the record, for us, we're the one paying money for this. So it's important that colleagues know what's happening in Councilman Gallagher's work is separate. I'm not there all the time, but we're putting the money on the table. And this is I just want to, Councilman Miller, go ahead, but it's not a question of whether it's standalone. The question is where it's going to be located, and will it be adjacent on the land that's purchased? And I'm hearing from the science that no problem, we'll be able to jet around and our vehicles and get people where they need to be. I'm not questioning the experts, but we saw what happened at the Juvenile Justice Center, and I just don't want a repeat of that.
Oh, none of us do.
I know you don't, but just, for recollection, Mr. Dever, they built that first as a Juvenile Justice Center, without the court, and then the court joined later on top of the detention center, which created this, huge space of wasted space of, it didn't go well. And I know we had experts then telling us this is a state of an art court and it's great. And it's okay to plop the court on top of the detention center. And, so I just want to be clear, we've made a decision that our courts will be separate and everybody's on board. And Mike Gallagher said that it's on record over there, but I want it on record here because we're holding the purse strings and paying for this. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's, you're right. And these are good questions. And sometimes I forget that people aren't available to watch all of this. I can assure you the Juvenile Justice Center is always in the back of my mind. and the problems that has continued to be for us. And I can also assure you, when it comes to the dollars and cents of this, there's not going to be a way in which I'm going to allow even a nickel to go spent the wrong way. I mean, it's just too important. The decision to go ahead and focus on the jail is because when we look at it, we're going to be providing, again, a better atmosphere for all included, hopefully a cheaper way, but not a cheap way to build something. And the Justice Center question, which the committee, again, which encompasses all of our partners in the courts, have agreed that we're going to do this jail. It's not going to be on the site of a Justice Center. The Justice Center can be separate. The connectivity with the Justice Center as far as movement of prisoners and detainees is very important. And that, again, was painstakingly taken through and why we came to the conclusion we came to. And again, once we get this architect on board, we're going to bring this back to this committee to okay the architect. That's when I anticipate Jeff Applebaum and his group will be giving us a broad scope of what this facility is going to be, what it's going to provide, what the committee's decisions were and why, and the potential discussions later down the line for the Justice Center proper. So there's a lot of work that's gone on, a lot of work that got us to where we're at. The Justice Center portion of this is going to be, I think, a little trickier than what we have right now. With the pandemic, we're running into some serious cost problems. So we're going to have to make decisions quickly and be judicious with the taxpayers' treasury. So all of that's going to be bottled together, and hopefully all the questions that the committee and any other council people might have will be answered at that time. And I anticipate that, Mike, when do you anticipate you'll be bringing the criteria architect on?
Yeah, our hope is, like I said, the steering committee, the Justice Center Steering Committee is scheduled for June 10th, 9 a.m. There will be public notice on that towards the end of this week. Our hope is to bring it before the council on the 22nd of June for first reading. And I'm assuming it comes back to Councilman Gallagher's committee. So that may be like June 29th, that it would be back in committee for discussion about the criteria architect.
Are we good? Are we good with that? So we're right there. It's these are great questions and these are important questions, but we're right on the cusp of getting to a broad presentation on this whole process. And I got to say, I've been happy to be part of this because it is really nitpicking, but you have to be. And the committee's worked very hard on this. And I'm proud of how we've really come together regarding some of these key decisions that have been difficult, no question about it. But we've all coalesced into getting this jail underway because it's going to change everything for us as a council and avoid some of the things that we're continually dealing with now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
to Ms. Simon and my colleagues, I think it's important to say more than just that we've studied this in a great amount of detail and this is what we've come up with. So I did attend a number of the steering committee meetings, and I just want to share a little bit of the reasoning that I heard about the direction that we're going in. They started out by saying that the jail needs to be a low-rise facility, one or two floors in a campus-like setting, so that you have the good lighting and you have it's easier to supervise that kind of a facility and a number of other reasons. And in order to accomplish that, it's probably going to have to be a little ways outside of the downtown area. Otherwise, the land is going to be just too expensive. But then they went on to say, in terms of the other Justice Center facilities, well, you want to have those close to downtown, and because that's where the legal and Justice Center community is located, and it would just be too difficult and inconvenient to have it way out away from downtown somewhere. And then the third thing that they said is that in comparison to the other expenses that are involved in this process, the cost of transporting the prisoners back and forth between the Justice Center complex and the jail is relatively small, and that the advantages of having the Justice Center somewhere in the central downtown area and the correction center in a low-rise campus-like fairly large setting a little bit farther away from the downtown area. The advantages of that combination outweighs the cost of doing the prisoner transport between the Justice Center and the Correction Center. So that was the basic outline of the reasoning as I heard it. I would ask Mr. Chairman to Director Dever, am I generally on the right track in what I said?
Yes, Mr. Miller, definitely, you're right on track. We're looking at a low-rise facility as opposed to a vertical facility that has elevators, escalators. Lighting is a new requirement. Right now, we pipe in artificial lighting into our some of our justice pods in the correction center, because that is a new standard now, so that you have natural sunlight coming into each of these cells. So it's an important piece of this. This low-rise facility should be able to accommodate that, so that we're looking at anywhere from 30 to 45 acres of overall space. It will need to be close to downtown. Councilman Miller is 100% correct that transportation cost, yearly operational transportation cost, and the workforce that needs to be able to do that is being accounted for. So those are all excellent points, and I appreciate Councilman Miller bringing them up.
Anything further? Okay. Any questions regarding the resolution? Hearing none. Mike, I would anticipate you want to move this along.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, please, if we could have second reading suspension, if it pleases the committee.
If it's okay with the committee, I'll accept a motion for resolution 2021-0136 to the full council under second reading suspension.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. 0139.
Resolution number 2021-0139, authorizing an amendment to contract number 756 with Applewood Centers for secure residential treatment services.
Who do we have speaking on this? Anyone from the administration?
Chairman Gallagher.
I was muted. I was muted. I'm so sorry. I'm here.
It's all right. It's all right.
Can you hear me now? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Sarah. I'm from Juvenile Court. So this is our amendment to our Applewood contract with secure residential treatment services. This is funded through our targeted reclaim grant. This is a program that we use for our felony adjudicated use. So I've also invited our Director of Programming, Bridget Gibbons, to kind of give you a little bit more information regarding the programming aspect, to give you more details on that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bridget Gibbons. I'm the Director of Programming here at Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. Applewood's, we call it Applewood CBTC here at our program. This is a program that is an evidence-based treatment modality for our deepest end youth that are at highest risk of placement in the Ohio Department of Youth Services. Applewood Centers provides beds for these youth in treatment. This is intensive treatment for these youth to keep them safe in a secured setting, while also providing behavioral health supports, intensive individual treatment, group-based treatment, which is cognitive behavioral interventions specific to addressing criminogenic thinking, also addressing any substance abuse issues that maybe that a youth may have. They have intensive treatment at least one time a week. They're meeting with the youth, 2 hours of group a day. And they receive schooling on campus there. And then when they complete the program, they step back down into the community with our probation officers, which are our placement aftercare workers. Will work to reintegrate them back into the community to reincorporate their family. Family therapy also occurs at Applewood. That is expected at least twice a month. We do, the kids in this program generally terminated about 80% success rate. So we're getting decent outcomes for the program. And again, these are kids that are really deep end felony level offenders who we are working to divert away from DYS and keep in our community and keep close to home so families can be engaged and allow us to keep the community safe and address these issues. Then they're stepped back down into community-based programs to wrap around the youth to ensure they sustain the benefits of their treatment. So that's really all I have about that. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for Sarah or Bridget?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair, what are the ages of the children?
Hold on one second. The youngest is 12, but we almost never let 12-year-olds in there. So average age is 15 to 16 years old.
All right. And your, through the chair, average length of stay?
Is 166 days.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions? Hearing none. Looking at the times, I anticipate you'd like this to move forward quickly.
Yes, please.
If it's okay with the committee, I'll accept a motion on resolution 2021-0139 to the full council under second reading suspension.
So move, Conwell.
And I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Take care.
Our last item is a discussion from the sheriff. Is the sheriff available, or Bob, are you going to handle this?
Just the preamble, Mr. Chair, just the preamble. Then the sheriff and his team are going to be opining on this, on what they think of this, and moving forward next steps.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in November of 2017, the county entered into a contract with Bedford Heights in order to manage their jail. The jail, which had at the time, at least as determined by ODRC in 2019, a rated capacity of 116 inmates. It was a 10-year contract, and if you wanted to terminate it, either party had to do so with 6 months of notification. So as part of that agreement, the county agreed to provide inmate housing to Bedford Heights. So we all know in March of last year, COVID hit, and by April 24th of 2020, we had an average daily population of 1,074. So there was no need at that point, and in fact, it was a burden to maintain inmates at Bedford Heights. The ostensible reason, I would imagine, for entering the contract with Bedford in 2017 is because we had jail populations in excess of 2,000. So the remaining inmates in April 24th were brought back by the Sheriff's Department on their own motion. They brought all the county jail and corrections, and the correction staff were reduced accordingly from whatever number they were to just 16 staff. They still needed staff out there in order to intake inmates that were arrested by Bedford Heights, because under the contract, we couldn't just tell Bedford Heights, too bad you have to bring them to the jail. We had obligations under the contract, so we needed to maintain at least 16 correction officers to do intake, and then sheriff's deputies would transport those those inmates back to the county jail. So it was becoming increasingly clear to the jail administration and to the sheriff the need to terminate operations at Bedford. So around June of 2020, when the average daily population at the jail was still low, but beginning to increase at 1,150, they began to examine what they would do and how they would proceed. So in August, the jail administrator and the sheriff came up with a recommendation to suspend Bedford jail operations but to maintain the contract, not terminate it. Suspend operations, but not terminate the contract, because at the time, and now crystal balls are very difficult to come by. And we see that the jail population is trending up, and we know that post-COVID, it will likely continue to do so, despite our best efforts. And we've picked up many best practices that we never had before the pandemic about appropriate bonds, about faster timing between probation violations and probation hearings to get people out of the jail. So we will continue to keep that jail population low, but it will increase below the current average daily population. And today, I think the population is around 1,580. So we're continuing to trend upward. So in August of 2020, Rhonda Gibson, and then with concurrence of the sheriff, they recommended that we suspend operations. And they said to the administration, which we concurred with, that the reasons were for the following: that they needed the correction staff, the 16 correction staff out there at the jail, far more inside jail 1 and jail 2, because we're all aware of the ever difficult staffing challenges at our jail to maintain the appropriate correction officer staffing level. Those 16 experienced correction officers would be a nice boon to the existing jail 1 and jail 2 staff. Second, it would eliminate the sheriff deputies with their limited resources from having to transport the inmates from Bedford Heights each time that they were dropped off, and we would no longer have to transport. We would also be able to bring back inmates, some of the inmates, workers, because they would provide good, needed support to repopulate our inmate workers inside jail 1 and jail 2 for laundry and cleaning. They had experience, and was becoming increasingly difficult as we lowered the jail population. We were keeping out the low-level felons. Those were the ones that were most eligible to be inmate workers because of their criteria, versus someone, for example, charged with a homicide. And then further, it kept the approach of keeping the contract in place and Bedford Heights available as a safety valve if and when we needed to have access to that 116 bed rated capacity. So there was agreement among the sheriff, jail administration, and the executive to move forward with negotiations with Bedford Heights to amend the contract to suspend the operation. So in September, the county and Bedford agreed on a draft, and the basic terms were as you have in the proposal. The county will pay Bedford $4,000 a month in order to transport the inmates. That dollar amount was agreed upon, which represents what a full-time equivalent would cost the Bedford chief of police in order to staff a deputy to do those transports. They also would agree that they would maintain full responsibility to maintain and do the general upkeep for the Bedford Heights Jail. Mr. Dever and his team mothballed it and coordinated the exit of us from the jail. And then further, the county can suspend this arrangement at any time and go back to housing inmates at the jail at its sole discretion. So November 12th, 2020, Bedford Heights returned and approved, and they signed and approved the contract. And with that, I'm going to turn over the jail with regard to any of the appropriation steps or any comments from the sheriff, Rhonda, et cetera, or any questions from the chair or the members.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
thank you. I just wanted to touch on a point that Chief Corey didn't directly state. Another one of the issues that had to do with bringing staff back downtown was a shortage of medical staff. And there was medical staff at the Bedford Heights facility that we needed desperately down here in jail 1 and 2 for processing during COVID. So that was another factor in the decision of the prior sheriff to withdraw services at Bedford Heights. The amendment that was entered into that Bedford Heights has originally agreed to was for an 8-month period of time, which puts us into June of this year. So the amendment that we're discussing, that we're requesting permission to move forward with, is temporary and actually retroactive, and we are going to have to come back in front of you again with a future progressive amendment moving into the future that is already being drafted by law and discussed with Bedford Heights. So we will be ready to move forward with that right away. This was held for a while in the Board of Control process, awaiting my appointment, which was delayed for a period of time. And so the request here is to allow us to go back and retroactively meet the negotiated terms that were negotiated prior to my arrival with Bedford Heights, so we can move forward from here. And then I think Chief Corey is correct in that we are currently at an artificially reduced daily average population, and we do want to maintain control and availability of another facility in a worst case scenario. So I would absolutely approve of everything that was done before I got here and do endorse it at this time.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at the agenda and at 2020-677, it said the period is up through 9/30/2027. But I'm hearing this is not the intent of the contract. Is this
Are
wrong?
you looking at the original?
The
Yeah,
time
maybe
period that
that's
you're
how it's
looking at is the
stated.
time period.
For the original?
That's the time period of the original contract, the 10-year original contract. So the amendment that we're discussing, that has been discussed and set to move forward with, is the 8-month between August of last year and June of this year. And then there will be a second amendment after that.
Okay. So it's just, it doesn't terminate the contract. It's just making modifications up through incremental periods.
Yeah, and the modifications are actually to make some recompense to the city of Bedford Heights for their new obligations to transport prisoners that they didn't have before, but it also allows us to hold that facility in operational status. So it has to be ready to be moved forward should we decide to reopen, and those obligations lie with the city of Bedford Heights as well to make sure maintenance is ongoing and complete.
Okay, and part of this facility, I thought it had some ICE detainees, some immigration facility as part of Bedford. Am I wrong that was happening there at some point? And if so, is it now?
There's a minimum.
At a certain point in time, Bedford Heights may have done that, but in the recent past, there was no contract with ICE that I'm aware of.
And the last question is, why did we can't terminate, and we don't want to terminate this one as an overflow. I understand, but what why did we choose Bedford to serve this role rather than the city of Euclid's contract that we did terminate? And they were forced essentially now to, do the transportation on their own, but Bedford were paying to do that. What was the deciding, why did we decide that? Or the administration?
I have to apologize, Councilwoman. Those decisions were made prior to my arrival. I will
Right.
say that
Yep.
the size of the facility at Bedford Heights probably played a large role because the size of the facility was much larger, but I don't have an answer for that, and I apologize.
Yeah, I know, Sheriff.
So-
Thank you. That's good. I'm wondering if Mr. Corey has any insight.
Yeah, so the Euclid Jail was terminated and the operations were terminated there prior to and without regard to COVID management. And I believe Rhonda Gibson would be in a best position to talk about operational needs and why that Euclid Jail was terminated. At the time that COVID hit, the Bedford Heights contract and the use of the jail was in full operations. So as COVID changed, the need to amend the way we use the Bedford jail necessitated these amendments. And so in order to come out from under the requirements to continue to have inmates housed at the jail, we had two choices: either terminate the contract using the 6-month clause, which is a reasonable tactic. But if we did that, we would close off the existing valve that we have, because we have a contract with Bedford. We have the ability to stand up operations there. Or two, take this course, which is to come to an agreement where we mothball Bedford, maintain the safety valve that we could use it at any time at our discretion, but have to recompense Bedford Heights because now we're requiring them, as the sheriff adequately put it, to transport inmates that they didn't otherwise have to transport before. So Euclid had already been terminated. Bedford was an existing contract for which we needed the inmates because we had an average daily population in excess of 2,000. COVID changed all that, and so now we need to remediate the terms of the contract.
Okay, I can go offline and talk to Ms. Gibson about, maybe it's the capacity, and just centralizing one other location as an overflow, but, just treating it a lot differently with some consequence to the city. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. Are there any other facilities besides Bedford that we have control of?
Councilman, no, the Bedford Heights is the only secondary facility we have right now.
Okay, and do we foresee the need to maintain Bedford as a secondary facility beyond the time that the new correction center would open, or when that happens, would this no longer be necessary?
I perceive that when the new correction center is fully functional, this will no longer be necessary, and we would move through the steps in the current contract where we would provide notice and terminate at that point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions regarding the item? None? Well, Sheriff, I don't think any action needs to be taken by us, so I guess that's the go-ahead to prepare your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, we're adjourned.